What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. What the? I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside my guy, Jeff Iafrady. Pretty boy. Jeff Iafrady, wild boy. Jeff Iafrady, my boy, Jeff. It's good to see you as always, man.
Dude, it's good to see you too, man. Especially how the season's been going. There's been a lot of reflecting, a lot of looking into the future. It's hard not to. But man, I gotta just talk about real quickly before we get into the video. The Pistons over the weekend. That bench unit, man. I know we're gonna talk about something different today, but I like how this
Mm-hmm.
roster's shaping up, despite the record. A lot of things to look forward to, I think, with the
Oh,
young.
yeah. I mean, listen, man, these guys are playing really, really hard.
Saw
And I think
Magruder out there too.
yeah, for sure. I think you saw like that back to back. I think that was I think that was like a valuable lesson for, our young guys, for those veterans to come in and to show them, hey, this is how you handle your business
Yep.
on a back to back. This is how you stay ready and prepared. And even though it was a rough showing out of Ivy, even though it was a rough showing out of Duran, it's a valuable lesson learned,
Experience, baby.
and they can leave that back in the past. They can leave that back into 2022 because Jeff, it is a new year. And as each and every one of us do at the beginning of the new year, we make a list of resolutions. We go through each and everything we want to change about ourselves, whether it be our weight, whether it be about our co-hosts, no, I'm kidding, Jeff. I love you. I'm kidding. But
See you guys.
but Jeff, I figured you and I today could sit down and do like a Pistons New Year's resolutions, if you will. I think, a lot of us, I've seen a lot of people, on the internet, including someone from a competing network of ours, Mike Valenti, spew some utter bull on his network about where he thinks the Pistons are at and where, like where they need to go next. About how, by the way, like it sounds like he hasn't even watched like the Los Angeles Clippers in like 6 or 7 years, or that he even knows like what their team's composed of and like what they've done. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation for other story. Mike Valenti. Anyway, Jeff, Jeff, Detroit Pistons 2023. What do you think's in store for them?
A lot of exciting things. I think we'll start with the roster itself with the young players. I mean, next season is the season. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if both players stay healthy, you get your Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey backcourt for hopefully, again, I'm going to say it, for an entire season. And again, that's the future right there. That's what I'm most excited about. Now, beyond the roster, Jalen Duran, you're going to see his development. There's a lot of guys to look forward to. But more than that, we'll talk about the money. The money that Troy Weaver has cleared up and the Pistons have available to them, it's hard not to be excited. Number one, because you never know what Troy can do with trades now that you have cap space available. And number two, you never know who he can snatch up in free agency. So again, there's a lot of things. I think roster improvement, kind of figuring out, because this roster right now currently, it's a lot of young guys mixed in with veterans who you don't really know will be dealt or not. So
Mm-hmm.
this season was about kind of figuring out the roster for the future. Or, a lot of coaches look at the roster, who's going to be here when we're contending for an NBA championship. And the Pistons are kind of in the process of that right now. So you're going to have a lot of clarity this offseason, which I'm excited for. In these players, man. I mean, the biggest thing and the thing I'm most excited for is to see these guys in their second year and even, third year, fourth year. You got guys like Killian Hayes, who most likely will be here next year. You saw Cade coming into his second year look damn good before he went down with an injury. Those are the things you get excited about. Like, I want to see what Jaden Ivey does now with an off season. We know the background he comes from and how hard he works.
We've
So
seen the
Jalen Duran, another
flashes.
one, what he can add to his game. So along with the roster getting better and these young guys improving, it's got to be free agency with what Troy Weaver can do with all that money available and the assets the Pistons currently have.
Yeah, most certainly. I think Jeff, I think the sentiment, in all seriousness, like from the Mike Valenti, conversation that he had, there were some valid points there. And I think the sentiment is that a lot of people want to see Detroit turn the corner and they want to
Absolutely.
see him do it soon. And I think the sentiment is that at some point Detroit does have to start winning. But Jeff, I feel like people are saying that as if the Pistons don't know that. And I feel like people are saying that as if that isn't the part of the entire plan all along, right? Like part of getting Jalen Duran and taking on that salary was deferring that salary to next offseason so that this upcoming offseason we could have even more salary cap to work with. We could have even more of an idea of who we're dealing with specifically with our young core. Obviously, the Cade injury isn't something you entirely planned for. However, it certainly did make them really sit down and hunker down and look at what we have in house, right? So, I think, even though the end of 2022 and these first couple months of 2023, it might not always be the most fun night, for the Pistons, in the NBA world, right? But just like last year, they have the opportunity to show, how they can improve and evolve as the season goes on. They can show how they can get better because if we remember, it was February on last year when this team had a different approach, when they were winning more games, when they were more competitive, right? So, guys like Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, who've already shown a ton of confidence and have already shown a lot of growth in their short time. I think they can really thrive as the season winds down. And then you throw in the fact that, Detroit's going to have, some of the best odds in the most important lottery in the NBA in the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a good spot no matter what happens. And there was this other sentiment, there's this other point where, like, just because you get another lottery pick this year, that's another young player, so therefore you're going to be really bad again. Do people not remember, like, when the Cleveland Cavaliers got this kid named Evan Mobley, and he came in his rookie year and helped elevated his team to the next level because they had other pieces in store to actually take the next step? Like, is that not what the Pistons are aiming for? Is that not what they even said before the season goes on, that they're kind of building like the Cleveland Cavaliers? Am I missing something, Jeff?
No, again, if you're picking top three, you're expecting a player you take to be able to play right away. And of course, they're a rookie, but and this is not a common thing, but Paulo Banchero. I mean, you take him number one overall. The guy already 20 points per game. I mean, he plays like a veteran already. Now, rookie and all that, he still has a lot of developing, but still, the whole narrative of them taking another player is it's not something to look forward to. I mean, that's bogus. Go back to what Troy Weaver said last offseason, and you don't think, again, Rod Beard says this best with me and Brandon, always saying, listen, and you know this best, Sean, because you're great at this, listen to what they're telling you. And when you listen to Troy Weaver and what he says, yes, you don't want a roster full of 21, 22-year-olds, but you got to figure out what kind of young core you have. Who's here to stay? And if you have an opportunity to add another guy in a top 3 pick in the NBA draft, you do that every day of the week. I mean, there's no question. Now, if he can play or he can't play, it doesn't matter. You're going to figure that out. You're kind of collecting all this young talent, and that decision is going to be made for you. But looking forward, it's kind of like what the Cleveland Cavaliers did. And I'm glad you brought it up. You found a young core you like, and then you go out and you get a Donovan Mitchell, right? You get a veteran in this league who's played in big games, has led his team to the postseason, and that kind of puts them over the top. And now they're in a different conversation. The Pistons are kind of in the early stages of that. They're figuring out their young core, and there's going to be a time, as we see Troy Weaver make moves, that somebody's going to be available, and I think Troy will capitalize on it. So again, we're in that process currently. So I'm not stressing about another, top 3 pick. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, 100%. And again, I know everyone's going to go to the exact same name, and it's going to be the guy that we're all going to be talking about for months, Jeff. Victor Wembanyama is the number one guy in this lottery. But, Jeff, we've seen already that even if Detroit doesn't get the number one overall pick, they're going to have a wealth of talent to choose from in this draft class. I mean, on top of Victor, we got Scoot Henderson, which you and I have drooled over. He could potentially be the next Derrick Rose, John Morant type guy to come into this league and dominate. You got the Thompson twins, Amen and Oscar Thompson, who both look great. Brandon Miller just dropped a 40 bomb a week or two ago. You got Nick Smith at Arkansas. You have Cam Whitmore at Villanova. Like, there are so many guys in this class, man. And like, that's the ultimate point, is that when you have this type of class, Jeff, your pick isn't just valuable because you can go and get any of these guys that you want.
Right.
Your pick now becomes a valuable asset that other teams could potentially be looking at if they want to hit the reset button. And that's the other point, Jeff, is that if Detroit wants to take, the next step this season, it might not just be through free agency or through drafts. They might have the opportunity to go out and make some trades as well. And I think, Jeff, if I were to classify 2023 as anything, the Detroit New Year's resolution, I think this is when Troy Weaver starts to show more and more of his hand. I think this is when Troy Weaver becomes more and more aggressive because now that he has the extension, now that there's the proof of concept of what he's done over the last couple of years, and have gotten a wealth of talent. Now you can go add either yet another young, insanely talented player, and then a ton of cap space to go get solid role players and guys that can bolster this roster. That's a beautiful position to be in. But Jeff, the ultimate point of it all is that they have choice and they have flexibility.
Yeah.
And there's not really a bad route to go down. So that's the thing that I think I want it like for like the 2023 Troy Weaver New Year's resolution. Show your hand, make your moves.
Mm-hmm. And you don't want anybody else in that position, at least personally, than Troy Weaver. Two things you look at with any general manager: your ability to make trades. We've seen him fleece multiple opposing general managers. And the second thing is draft and identifying talent. He's an expert at that. So with Troy, and this is a big word, that was kind of the word of the summer last offseason, flexibility. When you give a GM like Troy, where number one, you don't worry where you pick in the draft. I think that's a big thing. Everyone kind of feels that way. We felt it last year when you had the 5th overall pick. And then the second part is you never know what deal is going to be made. I mean, he's picking up the phones, and Troy has a great way of making. I don't know what he's doing, either gassing up the trade he's currently making, or bamboozling some other opposing general manager. But it's working.
He's got to have intel on
something.
somebody's wife, man.
No,
like
there's.
Like he's blackmailing somebody.
Yeah.
Something's happening here, man.
He's too dang slick with it. So for Troy, that's the position you want him in, and man, he's in it. And you got a summer. I think an exciting summer ahead for the Pistons.
Yeah, for sure. And that leads into what comes into the new year and into the fall, which is the return of Cade Cunningham, which is to go alongside the roster that's going to be pairing with him. I mean, Jeff, I think you and I agree that obviously the season, probably health wise, quality of play wise, it was the worst possible start that Detroit could have been given. And I think you and I agree that if Cade Cunningham was in the lineup, this roster would be doing better than it is right now.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But Jeff, even the crazy thing about it is that we look at this season and everyone's talking about how much of a disaster it is, how rough it's been. We have double the wins going into 2022 than 2023 than we did going into 2022. Like, this team is doing better.
Right.
And that's without Cade in the lineup. Like,
right. That gets lost a little bit. But again, I think people just look at how bad each season went and they throw the record out the window. It's just, and again, I don't know what people's expectations were. I can't speak for everybody, but mine was,
right.
And the big thing is Cade being out, because it kind of brings you clarity of where they are. Like, they're not going nowhere. You're looking at player development. And I think for the most part, I can't speak for everybody, but I've been, pleased with what I've seen out of the young guys for the most part.
Are you kidding? I mean, Isaiah Stewart looks like I honestly feel like after these last couple of games, I firmly believe that Isaiah Stewart, over the next couple of years, we're going to see him fully turn into the next reincarnation of Al Horford, like that type of player. And like people I heard, like I said that one time, so I was like, that doesn't sound like much of a compliment. Al Horford's a multi-time all-star and a guy that helped the Celtics get to a championship.
Every team would love him.
Yeah. And even if he's not like that all-star like type player, at the very least, Isaiah Stewart's going to be a damn good starter for a long time. Did you see what he was able to do with the ball in his hands, putting the ball on the deck against the Bulls the other night, Jeff? This guy was getting dimes to Jalen Duren in the paint. I'm like, Beef Stew can handle now?
No, again, for Beef Stew too, the thing that's impressed me the most is we made a video early before the season discussing, him adding the 3-point shot to his game more consistently, what his shooting percentage would be. And I sat here and said, you know what? I'd be shocked. I would be shocked if he shot 35% from 3. He said, you know what, Jeff? Yeah, you're an idiot. I'm shooting almost 37% from 3 on the year. Like and that's probably what the most scariest thing about Isaiah Stewart is because when he wants to do something and he works really hard at it, it just gets done. So I don't have any limitations for what Isaiah Stewart can be as he grows in his career. I mean, he's a fast learner. He's a hard worker, and he's got an attitude that not only Detroit loves, but I think any team would love. So he's got a bright future. Really does.
I know for sure I'm done putting limits on him. I mean, Jeff, I remember
Yeah.
this time last year, people were coming into our comments in our live streams telling us how Isaiah Stewart needs to go, how he's not the answer at the big position for Detroit. I mean, there were people saying this time last year, Jeff, that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum needed to be broken up. Like that's how fast things can change in the NBA. But I mean, Jeff, I think the ultimate thing is you throw in all these young pieces, you throw them all together. You know, Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, whoever we get to add in the draft this upcoming year, whatever players are available in free agency. Like, this is going to be a way better roster than we already have right now. And this roster's taken significant steps. I would say, you know, especially offensively, this
Yeah.
is a way better team than it was last year. And I think if we can just keep adding, consistent talent and veterans and people that can play on both sides of the ball, man, especially if we can get some solid wing talent this summer, we can do something next season, Jeff. I
Yeah.
really feel like we can not only make the play in, but potentially, make some noise and, be a first round team in the playoffs.
Yeah. And the thing that's hard because I don't want to put a cap on it because these players, they're getting better and you have to see where they project. Like, you don't know what these guys are going to look like next year. So that's what makes it so exciting. Like, how far along will Jaden Ivey be in his second year? How long and so on and so forth, even a Jalen Duren. So there's a lot to be excited about. It's early for me for my expectation. Obviously, it'd be the play-in, but you never know how far these guys come along. I mean, I don't want to, again, you talk about putting a ceiling on Isaiah Stewart. I don't want to put a ceiling on a single player on this team. So,
oh yeah,
you never know.
if there's anyone I'm not putting a ceiling on, by the way, it's Jalen Duren. Like, that is a guy where,
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I believe a lot of guys in this roster have potential to be really good players. Maybe that's the internal optimist in me. Maybe I'm a little biased. However, Jalen Duren with his athleticism and everything he's done already, I mean, that's just telltale signs of a future star.
He's a big X factor because
Yup.
if he turns into what we think, man, this roster is going to have some killers, man. They have young
Yup.
killers, but I'm talking about guys that are going to be in that conversation for being in an all-star team. So
That's
future's
a
exciting.
center that makes Giannis go, son of a bitch. Like, that's a guy that you don't want to drive against, dude. I'm
No,
telling you.
and he's
But
19 years old.
19. That's good. I feel like that's going to
Just
be the
turned
next
19.
Jason Tatum 19 meme, by the way.
Yeah,
Like, and he's
he's
only
gonna get a highlight.
19.
Yeah, and they're gonna bring up the yep.
Yep.
It's coming.
100.
Don't worry about it. It's
Oh yeah.
coming.
Oh yeah. Pause. Anyway, what do you think of Jalen Duren and the Detroit Pistons? What do you
Thank
think
you,
their
Sean.
ceiling is? Let us know in the comment section down below. But also, be sure you're following my guy Jeff on Twitter at JeffIF80, myself at Sean Half Court. But with that, folks, thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.